Now, earlier in the day, prosecutors outlined some of the items seized when they raided Diddy's homes. That included AR-15 rifles, ammunition, and images and videos of sex performances Diddy allegedly organized. Let's go to Neama Rahmani, president of West Coast Trial Lawyers, former federal prosecutor, joining us tonight from Los Angeles. Thanks for joining us today. Are you surprised that he's being held without bail, and what does that tell you?
I'm not surprised he's being held without bail because these are very serious allegations: sex trafficking, drug trafficking, some of which carry mandatory 10-year sentences in federal prison. That means the judge can't go lower than amount. And of course, we know that Diddy, at least allegedly, according to the indictment, has threatened some of these witnesses and tried to bribe them. So given the nature of the charges and the fact that there's a presumption of detention for some of them, Diddy is being treated just like any other criminal defendant, despite his fame and his wealth.
Okay, so is the approach to this case similar to the way we saw the R. Kelly case being pursued?
It is similar because obviously we're talking about a RICO indictment, which is a corrupt criminal enterprise. And, we talk about racketeering. Of course, RICO is typically reserved for organizations like the mob or the cartel or street gangs, but it can apply to someone like Diddy with a large entourage. Obviously, they're being prosecuted by the feds, also in New York. In R. Kelly's case, it was prosecutors in Brooklyn, not Manhattan, but it's a very similar prosecution. But there is one key difference, and that is R. Kelly was charged with sexually abusing minors. And even though there were a lot of rumors and allegations of underage women at these parties, so far, at least according to this indictment, we're not seeing any of that charge.
Now, they're not being clear, the prosecutors, about how many victims there are. Why would that be?
Well, I think they want to play their cards close to the vest. And I think the prosecution here is genuinely concerned that some of these victims may go sideways at trial. And this is why. Diddy has a lot of money, reportedly $1 billion. Some of these victims have filed civil lawsuits against Diddy. So I think the concern is they may take a civil payout and they may change their story, or they may not want to show up at trial. And of course, we know that Diddy has tried to, at least according to the indictment, intimidate some of these witnesses. There's threats, there's actual violence. Of course, we've all seen the 2016 video of Cassie being beaten in the hotel elevator lobby. So I think the prosecution doesn't want to commit yet, see what witnesses and victims they have, and then present that case to a jury when they know definitively who's going to come to court and testify.
You make a good point that there are several civil lawsuits ongoing. Will they be held as the criminal proceedings get underway, or will they just go ahead?
Those civil lawsuits are going to be put on hold. The criminal case has priority. Diddy, of course, has a Fifth Amendment privilege against self-incrimination, which means that while the criminal case is pending, he doesn't have to testify at a deposition or at any civil case. So those civil lawsuits, they're all going to be stayed, which is a legal term, which means put on hold while this criminal process all plays out.
So will much of this case rely on victim or witness testimony? We know there are videos that have been gathered, but we don't know what's on them necessarily in detail. We obviously know Cassie came forward to share her story, but do you think much of what will happen as this moves forward will rely on the testimony of witnesses and victims?
Well, you covered it. Those are the two broad categories. And obviously, first, we're going to start with the victims themselves and their live testimony in court. Now, sometimes jurors have a difficult time believing the testimony of just one victim or one witness, especially when they file a civil lawsuit, because we know Diddy's defense is going to be that this is just a money grab, and these individuals are making these claims just to shake down Diddy. Now, although jurors may disbelieve the testimony of one victim, if victim after victim, and there's at least 8 or 9 that have filed lawsuits, come forward and they tell the same story of physical and sexual violence, that's going to be too much for jurors to overcome and disbelieve. And like you said, the second big category, the video in the case. And if you believe Cassie, Diddy recorded many of these sex acts, and U.S. Attorney Damian Williams alluded to that same fact. So although people can lie, the video doesn't lie. So if there is indeed video evidence of these forced sex acts, then I think Diddy will almost certainly be convicted.
Neama Rahmani, good to have you, sir. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, as always.